All right, we're going to talk about the reproductive system next. And so you'll see in this lecture, we split this mostly between male and female because these systems are definitely the most different in comparison. In terms of function, they have some similarities, but the actual anatomy is much different, and there are some differences in function between the male and female systems. So, of course, they play an essential role in the development of excuse me, in the development of our offspring and also our behavior because of the presence of hormones and physical changes. And even though our reproductive system obviously is vital in the cycle of life, it's not necessarily vital for survival. So, of course, it's vital for reproductive purposes and procreation, but not necessarily vital to our survival as an individual. So the functions of our reproductive system, they produce gametes. So gametes, you'll see, is our term for our sex cells, our egg and our sperm, depending if it's male or female. Fertilization, so our male reproductive system is charged with supplying the sperm or delivering the sperm to the female reproductive system, which obviously houses the egg, and the fertilization process itself takes place within the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system is charged with development and nourishment of a new individual in the form of an embryo. And both systems produce reproductive hormones. You'll see when we get there, there's some differences, male and female, there as well. So this is a good summary slide in terms of the anatomy and the differences between male and female. So you'll see in the male system, the testis or testes are the primary reproductive organ. So they contain our seminiferous tubules. That's where the actual sperm is produced and where we produce our primary sex hormone, testosterone. And we'll talk about some of these other structures in more detail as we get going. In the female reproductive system, don't forget that the mammary gland and breast tissue is included in the reproductive system, since that is a part of the change that occurs with development of an embryo. The uterus is where the embryo and fetus eventually is carried. The ovaries contain our egg cells, which is the gamete in the female system, and the uterine tube is our site of fertilization, and that is how the egg gets from the ovary to the uterus, and we'll talk more about that. So as I said, gametes are the reproductive cells. So these are sperm in males and oocytes or eggs in females. So to form a gamete, there's a process called meiosis. This is a special type of cell division. So the normal cell division is called mitosis, and that's what all our other cells undergo. And that ensures we kind of get a carbon copy, a clone of the previous cell. In meiosis, we are trying to get a sex cell that only has half of the chromosomes of a normal cell. So we have a special process to ensure that we only end up with 23 chromosomes, because when we have 23 chromosomes from the sperm plus the 23 chromosomes from the egg, we get 46 total chromosomes, or kind of a full set, the 23 pairs that's in a normal cell. So meiosis is our special type of cell division for gametes, and make sure that we only end up with 23 chromosomes. Another term for that is a haploid cell. So fertilization occurs in the fallopian tubes, also called the uterine tubes, and this is when the sperm and our oocyte or egg actually come together. So the zygote is what forms next. This is a fertilized oocyte that has started to divide and is now a multi-celled organism. And about 30 to 14 days after fertilization happens, our zygote transfers from the zygote stage to the embryo stage. So we have fertilization happens in the fallopian tube. The zygote will implant on the uterus. It will develop into an embryo. And so our embryo is our stage from 3 to 14 days up to week number 8 of development. And then fetus will be from week 8 up to birth. So full term is typically considered 40 weeks. Really, anything over 36 weeks is considered pretty safe. Anything before that is going to be premature. So we're going to discuss the male system first. As I said, the testes are our primary reproductive organ. And so the testes are where testosterone and sperm is produced. And then there's a series of other ducts, glands, and supporting structures that help to actually deliver that sperm via the male reproductive system. So we're going to go through all of these as we go through. So here's the actual structure itself. So here is the testis. This is where the sperm is produced. It ends up going to the epididymis, where our sperm matures, passes through the vas deferens, and that's how it gets all the way to the seminal vesicle. The seminal vesicle feeds into the ejaculatory duct, and then that joins with the urethra in the prostate. The urethra travels through the penis to get to the external environment. Here's an internal view. Don't worry too much about this slide here. I'm not a huge fan of the actual angle. It doesn't show the relationship and location quite as well. All right, the scrotum is just one of our supportive organs. It contains the testicles. It also contains the dartos muscle. That's not a super important one. That's kind of a nice to know, but that's what actually helps to move the testes closer or farther away from the body, depending on temperature. So sperm is kind of has to develop under a specific environment. And so that muscle and kind of keeping it away or closer to the body ensures that our testicles stay at the temperature we want at all times. Another muscle that is located right kind of near and attached to the scrotum is our cremaster muscles. And these are really extensions from our abdominal muscles that can also help to move the testicles closer to the body if needed. So if we were to take a cross section of the testes, it is a network of all these tubules called our seminiferous tubules. And these are where sperm are actually produced. So we have a few different types of cells that secrete important substances. We have our interstitial cells. They're also called Leydig cells. And these are what secrete testosterone, or our primary sex hormone. The germ cells are the immature gametes. Eventually, these cells are what becomes sperm. And then we have our sustentacular cells, and these produce nutrients for our germ cells, as well as hormones that help promote spermatogenesis, or the creation of sperm. So as I just said, spermatogenesis is the formation of sperm. It's going to begin in males at puberty. And so at this point, interstitial cells are going to increase in number and size. The seminiferous tubules are also going to enlarge, and they're going to begin to produce those sperm cells and sustentacular cells so that they can produce sperm. Sperm is divided into 3 portions. The head is what contains the nucleus and DNA. So that's what has the 23 chromosomes. The midpiece has the mitochondria. So that's what has kind of like the energy portion of our sperm, and that is to drive the tail, which is known as a flagellum, and that's how the sperm is able to move. All right, so there's a few different ducts or passageways that sperm has to pass through to get from the testicle to the urethra. And so the epididymis is one of the main ones. These are found on each side of a testis, and this is where the sperm empties from the seminiferous tubules. So the seminiferous tubules are producing those immature germ cells that are going to become sperm. And then as the sperm develops, it'll pass to the epididymis and it'll continue to mature here before it is really ready to bind to an oocyte. From the epididymis, we then pass to the ductus deferens. You'll hear this called the vas deferens most often. And so this is how the sperm is then going to get from the epididymis to the seminal vesicle. Kind of a nice to know fact is that when a vasectomy is performed, this is the portion of the pathway where the surgery occurs. So they block off or disconnect the vas deferens, which means the mature sperm cannot reach the seminal vesicle or the ejaculatory duct. So our seminal vesicle is located kind of towards the end or ampulla of the vas deferens. And so these are going to join with that portion of the vas deferens as well as the prostate gland to form the ejaculatory duct. And so the ejaculatory duct is located kind of right in the middle of the prostate gland, and that's where it's going to join the urethra. The urethra extends from the urinary bladder to the end of the penis. It's the passageway for both urine and male reproductive fluids, but urine and semen are not able to pass through the urethra at the same time. The penis itself, we're not going to really get into the details of the different portions, but there are kind of three different sections of erectile tissue that are going to fill with blood when an erection occurs. And so the whole goal of the penis or the purpose in the male reproductive system is to be able to transfer sperm from the male system into the female system. Of course, it also has the urethra, so it excretes urine as well. The distal end or the head of the penis is known as the glans penis. And then the external urethral orifice is where the actual opening to the exterior environment is. So there's some other glands that contribute secretions to semen. So semen's not just sperm. We have a few glands that contribute secretions. The prostate gland is one of those. It contains enzymes that help liquefy the semen and also neutralize the acidity of the vagina. So you'll see the glands in general, their job is to secrete other substances to help the sperm get to the egg cells or the oocytes. So the bulbourethral gland, this is a very small gland. It contributes just a little bit to semen. And again, its job is to neutralize the acidity of both the male urethra and the female vagina so that the sperm can actually survive. The seminal vesicles provide fructose, which is a type of sugar that can be utilized by the sperm. It also contains prostaglandins, so this helps decrease the mucus thickness around the cervix, so it makes it easier for sperm to travel through it. And it also helps the sperm get into the uterine or fallopian tubes where fertilization takes place. So this is the breakdown of the semen. I don't believe that you really need to know your percentages here. Just know that a majority of the fluid is from the seminal vesicles. So remember, that is kind of the end point prior to the ejaculatory duct from the testicle to epididymis to vas deferens to seminal vesicle. Another 30% is from the prostate gland. And then we get 5% from the bulbourethral gland, and then 5% of additional interstitial fluid comes from the testes. You can hear Ollie in the background there. Okay, so only about 2 to 5 milliliters of semen will be ejaculated on average, but that is going to contain 200 to 500 million sperm. And sperm can technically live for 72 hours within the female reproductive tract. So fertilization doesn't necessarily take place immediately. There's kind of a window where fertilization can take place. And so here's just a little bit of a summary or reminder of what we just discussed in terms of the path of sperm. So the actual development of our immature germ cells occur in the seminiferous tubules. And then once we have immature sperm there, they travel to the epididymis where they can mature further until they are ready to be introduced to the female reproductive system. The ductus deferens or vas deferens is how the sperm is going to get to the seminal vesicle from the epididymis. So the seminal vesicle is going to receive other secretions from the prostate and bulbourethral glands. That's going to eventually join with the ejaculatory duct at the prostate gland, and that joins with the urethra where semen is going to be ejected or ejaculated from the body. Some hormones here, we're going to talk about these for male and female. This first group and this first hormone are the same for the most part in our male and females, and then you'll see we have some differences as well. So this first one, gonadotropin releasing hormone, so the abbreviation there, GnRH, this is actually produced up in the brain in the hypothalamus. And so when this gonadotropin releasing hormone is released, it ends up stimulating the release of our next two hormones, LH and FH. So LH is produced in the anterior pituitary. FSH is produced in the anterior pituitary as well. LH is going to promote the secretion of testosterone, and then FSH is going to promote spermatogenesis itself. And so this is obviously specific to the males. So in males, LH produces testosterone, FSH is going to prompt the formation of sperm. So we said sperm begins to form during male puberty, typically starts between ages 12 to 14 and will be over around age 18. Testosterone is our primary hormone. And so the onset of male puberty is considered the formation or when secondary sexual characteristics begin to develop. This is changes in skin texture, so skin gets a bit rougher. Fat distribution changes. We get hair growth in the pubic region, the chest, armpits. You get skeletal muscle growth, so that doesn't mean necessarily that they start working out, but even without that input, muscle is going to begin to grow. And we're going to get some changes at the larynx. This is why we get the change in the voice. So we get changes at the vocal cords. So we just said that testosterone is our primary hormone. If you remember from our previous slides, this is going to be produced by the interstitial cells in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. Inhibin is another hormone that's secreted by our seminiferous tubules, and this will inhibit FSH secretion when we already have enough sperm and we really don't need to undergo spermatogenesis. But testosterone is our important one. I don't think you guys need to really worry about inhibin besides kind of that nice to know. So the male sex act itself is a series of different reflexes. And so initially it's going to result in the erection of the penis. And then have two kind of next steps, which we know as emission, and then finally ejaculation. So emission is when sperm cells are actually going to move. We're going to get the secretions from our different glands, and the semen is going to enter or be ready to enter the urethra. Ejaculation is when we actually get the expulsion of the secretions all the way through the urethra. So emission is when all of our semen is kind of gathering and building up within the urethra and system. Ejaculation is when it's actually expelled. So typically, kind of sensations are interpreted as pleasurable during the male sex act, and along with ejaculation, there's going to be an orgasm. There's following the orgasm, there's this stage known as a resolution. And in this stage, it's when the penis will become flaccid again. And there's a period of time called the refractory period where the male is going to be unable to achieve erection or a second ejaculation. So erection is our first major component. Initially, it's a neural stimuli that's going to cause the penis to enlarge, and eventually we will get input from the parasympathetic nervous system that allows the arteries to vasodilate, and that'll allow blood to flow into the penile tissue. As we said, emission is when we have accumulation of our sperm and the semen, so sperm plus the secretions from the different glands into the urethra. This is actually stimulated by sympathetic potential. So we said erection is parasympathetic input, emission is sympathetic input. So during emission, there's going to be actual contraction of the ducts and glands. This helps to move the fluid along as well as allow the glands to contribute their secretions to the semen. And then ejaculation will result with a smooth muscle contraction. And the smooth muscle surrounds the urethra itself. And there will actually also be some skeletal muscle contraction that occurs at the base of the penis from some of the pelvic floor muscles, which kind of help to propel or put pressure on the urethra. All right, we're going to go ahead and pause there because we're going to move on to the female reproductive system. So that's a good spot to break this up.